Testing, testing. Just letting people know it's about an 8-minute warning. I'd like to thank you all for being here promptly and on time. We're going to start promptly at 7 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. So if you could find a seat, stay socially distanced in your seats, that'd be great. And we'll get started right on time. Lester, are you doing the master plan up? All right, well, we get ready to start. I'm just going to do a sound check. Ben, in the gymnasium, can you turn the microphone on and tell me if you can hear me and see if we can hear you?
This is the gymnasium. I can hear you.
Thank you. Is there anyone other than yourself in the gymnasium right now?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on Monday, October 18th, 2021. If you can, I would ask that you rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag's over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I am hereby calling to order the October 18th, 2021 special town meeting. The critical requirements for a town meeting are for me, the moderator. I'm John Arnold, 251 West Main Street. I am your elected moderator. We also have present your elected town clerk, Wendy Mickle, and we have a warrant that was delivered and posted and approved by the selectmen that called this meeting to be. According to our bylaws, this regularly scheduled fall special town meeting has no quorum, so we don't have to worry about a quorum. But I will personally, and on behalf of all the other voters, thank you all for coming out on a Monday night to do the town's business and to act as Westborough's legislature. So I will declare the meeting in session. So as you may have seen, the Board of Health, as we sort of gradually glide our way back to doing things the way we did, they've allowed us to be a little more tightly packed than we used to be, but they're asking that all the family groups stay at least 1 or 2 seats apart and just keep your masks on unless you're talking at one of the microphones. And in the back, I've taped around some of the places where I thought it was so it's more than 6 feet there. I'm for more than 6 feet, so I will try to remember to take my mask off when I talk, because I remember from last time, people said it was easier to understand me. So while you're sitting here and not doing anything, please leave your masks on, with the exception if you believe you can't wear a mask for a medical condition. That's why we have the gym there. And so there you'll need to be 6 feet apart. But so far I see everyone's doing okay, and we have the gym all ready in case we need it. So we're going to do this quickly because we've got work to do and we've got a few things to hear about. I'll introduce the select board down to my right, your left. We have the Advisory Finance Committee, my left, your right. We have the school department representatives down here, my left, your right, and toward the front. We have planning board people here, and then there are other department heads here as well. So the Advisory Finance Committee is a group of 9 people that I appoint. You should have a copy of their report and recommendation. It not only has the warrant itself, but it has their recommendations as well as the select board recommendations. The Advisory Finance Committee does a deep dive into all of the items that come before town meeting, and their responsibility is to meet and confer and to vote a recommendation to the town meeting. I'd like to thank everyone involved in putting yet another difficult but more normal town meeting together. So we've got obviously the whole school staff who helps me. Steve Masciarelli, also from the school, helps with the AV and the microphones. Mark Stockman's running the projector. Westborough TV sets up a lot of the audio and video as well. And I'd like to thank the Board of Health and the Select Board for their willingness to continue to have ongoing discussions to figure out how we can do this as best we can. Our bylaws require that I nominate a deputy moderator who will preside in the event of my absence or will preside in the gymnasium if necessary. It's you, the meeting, that selects the deputy moderator. My role is to recruit and nominate someone. I've nominated Benjamin Gold of 19 Blake Street, who's actually sitting in the gym right now, making sure that we know if there are voters there. He has been briefed and he is prepared to serve. So I nominate Mr. Gold. We'll now exercise putting up our voting slips. We don't have the electronic voting back yet because it still haven't had quite enough time to pull that together. If you are in favor of my nomination of Ben Gold to be a deputy moderator, please raise your voting slip. Thank you. Put those down. Anybody opposed? I see none in opposition. Mr. Gold is elected your deputy moderator. Mr. Gold, I know we can't see you, will you please rise? Do you solemnly swear that having been elected deputy moderator that you will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Please be seated. As I said, if we get into the meeting and nobody's sitting there and you want to participate more comfortably in the seats here, feel free to move in here. I would just ask that every once in a while you check the gym to make sure there aren't any voters in there. And also, if the people out in the check-in station, if they could let us know if a voter feels the need to use the gymnasium so we can make sure that we're ready for them. I have not heard of any non-voters who request to be on the floor and to speak. I will note that the town bylaws allow any town employee to represent and to answer questions on their behalf, so they don't need to be admitted. Anyone else needs to be admitted by you, the voters. Does anyone have a non-voter who they believe is here and might wish to speak on an article? I see none, so we will continue. So I am going to skip over a lot of things so we can get going. I will mention that most of what I normally say is on this town meeting at a glance inside. Essentially, our bylaws say that any individual can only speak up to twice on a given article or a given motion and without permission of the committee, and then permission of the meeting, and then permission would be granted only after everyone's spoken. The local custom is to allow speeches of 2 minutes approximately, and I have my phone here to time things. Presentations are typically limited to 5 minutes. Right now we don't have roving microphones, but if anyone wants to speak and feels they're unable to get to one of the standing microphones, let me know and we will arrange for a microphone to get brought to you, or else I will come down and you can state your question to me and I'll restate it for you, or I'll bring you a microphone. That will hurry things along. I'm going to remind everybody to turn off their cell phones or put them on vibrate. Emergency exits are clearly marked. If an alarm does go off, we've got representatives from the police and fire department here, so I would suggest that we all get ready to do what we have to do, but maybe wait to take some guidance from the police and fire people who can actually tell us what the alarm is. So now, first things first, there are a few groups that wanted to make some brief remarks to the voters, and this is one of our best opportunities to do that. I've asked them to keep them brief, but they are items that I think are of interest to town meeting voters. But first of all, the first of which is a celebration. She is not here tonight, but I've heard that she's going to be watching on TV at home. I received word that the Select Board actually issued a commendation in recognition of Patricia Bunny Perrin, who's turned 100 years old. So I will read her commendation from the Select Board. It's an extraordinary feat to turn 100 years old, which is why we want to recognize you with this centenarian citation. You have been an eyewitness to what generations of citizens in this very town learned as part of history lessons in school. You witnessed humanity at its best and worst times, experienced the robust growth of human capabilities in such areas as medicine, technology, engineering, and social justice. Most importantly is that you saw the Boston Red Sox break the curse of the Bambino. As a lifelong resident of Westborough, we hope that your time here has provided you with warmth, comfort, and general happiness. We're so glad that you're here to share the community with all of us. And Ms. Perrin, please, on behalf of all the voters of Westborough, let us all wish you a happy 100th birthday, and thank you for caring and thank you for being a part of Westborough. Thank you. Another brief update for those of you who are at the annual town meeting may know that I was charged with appointing a town seal review committee as part of that, and I just wanted to give a brief update. I spent the summer interviewing everyone who signed up and wanted to be considered, and I've appointed that committee, and they have started to meet. They are just about ready to start their outreach, so you can expect to be hearing them soon, doing public forums, and also their meetings are not only posted on the town website, but the recordings are all available on Westborough TV. So you can expect to be hearing about that more in the future. It just took a little while to get started because a number of people were interested, so it took me a while to interview everyone, and then with the summer, it took a while to get things going, but they've had 3 meetings, and they're going to be meeting Wednesday night and start addressing the outreach. Next up, as you may have read in some of the papers or heard in various social media, the Master Plan Committee has made its final report, and I will recognize Lester Hensley to give a brief update of the Master Plan report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Lester Hensley, 39 Arch Street. I appear before you to announce the publication of Westborough's 2021 Master Plan and to let the legislative body of Westborough know of the publication and encourage them to use it as a reference as you consider your decision-making now and into the future. A master plan is a required document of the state of Massachusetts under Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81D. It requires a town through its planning board to present to the community or to gather through a participative process the community's intentions for the next 10, 15 to 20 years. We last published a master plan in Westborough in 2003, so it was time for an update. So I come before you to extend thanks and appreciation to all who contributed to the creation of this update. In particular, we're grateful to all of the residents who participated in the process and whose contributions have richly enhanced and informed the work of the Master Plan Advisory Committee, who are a group of 25 local residents, officials, municipal employees, calling on their experience, knowledge, expertise, and demonstrated commitment in planning for Westborough's future. I think the town can be particularly proud of the effort and focus of the committee and the participants in maintaining a positive and future-forward mindset through the process, despite the backdrop and limitations on gathering imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. In doing so, their breadth of vision and depth of focus make this document a powerful guide to policy decision-making. So the overarching feedback from the community was clear. Balance future growth against preservation of the elements of environment and culture that make Westborough a uniquely desirable location in which to live, learn, recreate, work, volunteer, and age. As a document, it's comprehensive and thorough. It's packed full of data and information about the community and will provide, if you take the time to read it, a very in-depth look into what makes up the baseline conditions in Westborough. But this plan is more than that. The state requires chapters on land use and development, housing, economic development, natural, cultural, and historic resources, open space and recreation, public facilities and services, and transportation and mobility. The Master Plan Advisory Committee, however, added 2 other chapters to a master plan, one on sustainability and climate change, another on public health, both of which I think are particularly timely given the challenges that we're facing both locally and globally in areas of sustainability and of public health. So the 11 chapters of the master plan are meant to be read and acted upon in total and in relation to one another, despite and because of the creative tension that is often created in these different areas of policy making. And I would encourage all of our administrators, as well as all of you as legislative body members, to think about all of these items in balance as we consider changing policy in the town. We have come before us a number of prescient planning boards who set zoning requirements in place that maintain this balance between development, of land and preservation of the lungs of the community and access to recreational, passive and active recreation. So read in total and read in balance, I believe we have a wonderful guide here to make decisions over the next 15 to 20 years. So Mr. Moderator, with that, I introduce to you the master plan. It will be available for download or for reading online at the town's website, the planning board website, westboroughmasterplan.com. And there will be a couple of printed copies, one at the library, one at the planning board, and one at the town clerk's office. It's a 600-plus page document with all of its appendices. And so the print run will be limited for cost reasons, but it will be available for your review. So again, my thanks to all of the members of the Master Plan Advisory Committee on behalf of Vice Chair Hazel Nurse and myself, as well as on behalf of the Planning Board, and we hope you use this document going forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley. Next, we have a report from the Library Director, Maureen Amiot, on behalf of the Library Trustees and the Library Building Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Maureen Amiot, 6 Arch Street, Library Director. I appreciate the chance to give you a very brief update on the library renovation project. The project to renovate and expand the library began with a needs assessment in 2012 that determined the current library is undersized for its current and future use. We were awarded a grant from our state agency, the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, in 2016 to do an in-depth study, consider alternate locations, and do a high-level conceptual design. So if you've been to town meeting before, you have heard us talk about this and you've seen some of the plans. In 2017, we submitted an application for a construction grant, and we were one of 29 projects across the state to be awarded a grant. Our grant is approximately $9.4 million towards the estimated $24 million cost of the project. We were, however, placed on a waiting list for our funds. In July of this year, we finally moved up to number 1 on the list. And you've always heard me say, our library is number 1. Well, now we really are number 1. So what does this mean? We expect to be awarded our grant in July of 2022. Until then, we're working on a little bit of refining of the design and a new cost estimate funded by library trust funds. We expect to have the new cost estimate in late summer of 2022, so we'll be able to share information widely before next fall's town meeting. Once we're notified in July that our grant funds are available, we have 6 months to get local approval. So we expect to be at next fall's town meeting to ask for your approval of the project. Once the approval takes place, we would continue our design work, seek a temporary location, and relocate to that spot. Construction would likely start around the end of 2023 and would take about 2 years. It would be completed in late 2025 or early 2026. So a little about the costs. The cost estimate for this project was created in 2016 in preparation for our grant application. At the time, with 3 years of escalation costs included, it was estimated to cost about $24 million. Our grant award, as I said, was about $9.4 million, so the total estimated cost to the town for a renovated, expanded library was about $14 million. We all know the pandemic has affected construction costs for both materials and labor, so our new cost estimate will be very important. The grant award amount will not change regardless of the outcome of that cost estimate process. So this was a high-level concept of what the exterior of our building could look like. You can see that it'll be scaled proportionately to the original building, and the design will reflect the look of the original 1908 building. It's almost guaranteed it will not look exactly like this picture because we have a lot of design and modification to do between now and then, but this was the first concept. We'll have public meetings and we'll have opportunities for you to ask questions and give input as we refine our designs going forward. I just want everyone to know all of the documents related to the project, the grants that we had for planning and the construction grant, and all of the designs and drawings can be found on the library website along with my contact information. I'm always available for questions or to share more in-depth information about this project. I think it's one of the most exciting things I've ever been a part of, and I hope that you'll be as excited about me when you see it too. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. So the reason we heard all these reports is that, as you can tell, one of the reasons why I always emphasize that we're here acting as Westborough's legislature is that we've got master plan things that will come before this meeting, we've got the library that will come before this meeting, and even any changes to the town seal that may be recommended would come before this meeting. So I thought it was important for me to shorten my remarks and provide a few minutes for people to just set the scene for what will likely be coming to your attention at future town meetings. But with that said, we're still ready to go by the time I'm usually ready to go, so thankfully that plan worked. And now we move on to Article 1. Article 1, dealing with the appropriation of Commonwealth Transfer Station infrastructure funds. Do I have a motion, Mr. Pand?
Good evening, Chris Pant, Director of Public Works. I move that the town vote to transfer from receipts reserves account the sum of $3,843.10 for the purposes stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Pand.
I think this is pretty straightforward. This is money that's allocated to Westborough based on a tax levied on rideshare programs and those that originate within Westborough. So we're just asking for you, town meeting, to appropriate this money so we can spend it on necessary transportation related improvements.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Pand? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Payant's motion to transfer from receipts reserves the amounts shown on the screen. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. Any opposed, please raise your voting slips. I see none. Mr. Gold, I'm assuming there's still no one in the gym?
No one here. I'll be coming in for
declare
next
that a
one.
unanimous vote. Yeah. I wasn't asked to begin. We don't normally do that stuff. Did you want to get one? Didn't? I didn't think we did special meeting. Oh, we did? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. I was reminded that there's a town manager's report on behalf of the selectmen. We've still acted on Article 1. I was thinking we only did the town manager's report at the annual town meeting, but apparently I was wrong. So, first mistake of the night, yes. Okay. Yeah. You want to give one too? Okay. All right. 2 mistakes tonight. It's going well so far. You want to go first? Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, sorry. First, we have the Advisory Finance Committee report where they review the report and recommendations. My apologies for this mistake.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Beretti, 54 Adams Street, Chair of the Advisory Finance Committee. Thank you for being here. Let me begin by saying that the Advisory Finance Committee is pleased to report that Westborough remains financially healthy. As we continue to move into fiscal year 22, we would like to again acknowledge the effort of our elected officials, the town manager and her team, department heads, the school committee and the superintendent, and all who contribute to the day-to-day functioning of our town. Their work and the supporting fiscal management policies are keeping us in a very good position. That said, I would like to use my time to focus not on today, but on the future, because the next 1 to 5 years may test Westborough's appetite for spending and tolerance for potential increased taxes and fees. As we work to bring back normalcy in our town and in our own lives, The cost of growing and changing Westborough will have its consequences, especially when we combine that cost with the issues that we are going to have to address over these next 5 years. Let's remember, please, that while we have a desirable and vibrant community, improvements come at a cost to everyone. There is wealth in our town, but not everyone is wealthy. As we have said in past reports, perhaps ad nauseum, but we believe worth repeating, if managing the tax bill is a priority, then we, the citizens of Westborough who make the spending decisions, must pay attention and focus on managing our expectations for and the pace of the projects, services, and new facilities that we are asked to consider. And given the many present and potential requests, there will be competition among needs, meaning money spent on nice-to-have initiatives or asks may mean we have to limit our capacity to fund other future requests. So what spending decisions are likely to be coming, let's say in the next 12 months, and what may be coming, let's say over the next 4 to 5 years? First, a word of caution. This is not an exhaustive list. It recognizes those items we anticipate and some of those identified as high priority in the town's strategic plan or recently adopted master plan. We urge you, our fellow citizens, to become well informed with these documents, because there are certainly many other potential impactful initiatives in them. Becoming familiar with the capital planning process that has been implemented to help us identify and prioritize needs and potential funding is also a source of important information for you. So as we highlighted in our report to you, likely coming in the next 12 months will be a need for you to make decisions on the following: employment contract obligations, a new funding strategy for OPEB, other post-employment benefits for the employees of Westborough and former employees of Westborough. This new strategy is intended to mitigate the previous effects of COVID-induced cuts to the budget item, and which, if voted affirmatively by the AFC and the Select Board in the next couple of weeks, will result in the restoration of annual payments of $1.1 million, payments that will eventually be funded through incremental increase in taxes. Item 3, a proposal, as you heard, for the renovation of the library. School renovation and maintenance projects. Multiple town infrastructure projects, potentially multi-million dollars in cost, such as water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure, roads and sidewalks, and fleet and equipment replacement. A proposal to implement the Community Preservation Act. Proposals to initiate recommendations in the Climate Action Plan. Top priority initiatives in the strategic plan, such as public safety and municipal staffing, which will likely bring associated capital spending, and accelerated development of the multi-use trail system. And finally, some restoration of other COVID-induced operating budget reductions. Now, what may be coming in the ensuing 4 to 5 years? More town infrastructure projects of a capital nature, again, potentially multi-million-dollar efforts. High priority initiatives in the recently adopted town master plan, such as land use and the protection of natural, historic, and cultural resources. More high priority initiatives in the strategic plan, which include the potential for a multi-generational center and a public safety substation. Other capital requests over and above some of the items mentioned above that the Capital Planning Committee has or is currently evaluating. Additional restoration of COVID operating budget cuts. While some of this list may be paid for with federal or state funds, most will not. That will fall to us, the taxpayers, to decide how to do it, whether through our available cash reserves, enterprise fund retained earnings, borrowing, or tax increases, or not at all, which is always an option. Let me conclude with this. While the enthusiastic efforts of numerous paid and unpaid citizens of Westborough have produced many positives and optimism, and we thank them for that, let's not be distracted from moving forward prudently, mindful that we will soon have to make decisions and that the time to start paying attention is now. Thank you. Mr. Moderator?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Beretti. And now Ms. Williams.
Thank you. I'll be brief in my comments, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the decisions that you have before you today. This slide here is showing what happened to our budget process in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, as a reminder, we cut about $2.5 million out of town and school budgets, and we reduced our total budget increase for the FY21 budget from the 4.31% to 2.97%. So as Mike just talked about, there's a lot of things that were cut out of our budget in fiscal 21 that over the next few years we'll be asking to put back into the budget. Here you can see things that we have restored in fiscal 22, so things that have already come before you and have already been approved, as the funding of the economic development coordinator position, DPW laborer, one additional officer in the police department, and then the moving of funding for the outreach worker salaries from the grant, which we used in response to COVID, back onto the budget. Elected official stipends, professional development, and miscellaneous expenses. So in this town meeting, we're looking to do some more restoration into the budget, and included in the budget before you tonight is not just restoration, but also continuing to move forward. I think we're all really proud of all the things that we were able to do despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Examples of that would be the acquisition of land that's very desirable to the community. And so tonight, we're gonna be asking for things that are the recommendations and outcomes of some studies that we've done. So the police department staffing study, the non-public safety staffing study, the land management in the conservation department. These things will be before you for your consideration this evening. And so the total increase to the budget that's for your consideration is $109,282 across all of these budgets that you see before you. And the estimated tax impact of those increases is $13 to the average single family. Here, we always like to remind everyone that our numbers are constantly changing, and that's really due to revenues. So especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when revenues we were unsure of, particularly related to interest, to hotel and motel taxes and meals taxes, we were constantly watching as those revenues came in to see where our finances were. And so in May of 2021, when we were before you at the annual town meeting, we were estimating an average single family increase of the $332. At the September budget summit, we estimated an increase of $383.90. And tonight, if everything were to be approved on this previous slide, we're estimating an increase of $360. Understanding that we don't set the tax rate until November, and that's when everything will be solidified. Important to recognize is this note at the bottom that inclusive of that $360 is the decrease that you have before you tonight in the golf club enterprise account. So last year we subsidized the golf club budget with $153,178 on the taxes, and because they did so well, we were able to increase the revenue estimates for fiscal 22, and so we're able to actually decrease the impact to the average single family. This shows where we are related to previous years, so we're estimating that $360 in fiscal 22. And then this shows where we are in comparison to our data dashboard communities. So we're that green line in the middle. And this is for the fiscal 21 because, as I mentioned, communities have not set their tax rates for fiscal 22 yet. The total town reserve shows that we are financially healthy. We have a combined free cash and stabilization, or our reserves, at 16.25%, which you can see exceeds our goal of 10 to 15%. That free cash gets certified at the end of the fiscal year, And typically we use that free cash in our town meetings. So you have some articles before you this evening to use some of the free cash, and then also at the annual town meeting in March, you'll have several articles before you for free cash. We use that for one-time expenses, and in the annual town meeting is when we will be before you with capital items. If everything is approved this evening, our reserves will go down to that 15.63% you see at the bottom middle of your screen. And again, we expect that it will go down further in this fiscal year at the annual town meeting. This shows the growth of our excess levy capacity. So our excess levy capacity has grown consistently since 2019. And then this is our slide showing our FY23 budget process. So you just heard from the AFC chair that it's important for all of you and your neighbors to get involved in the process. So I just wanted to focus your attention at the bottom half of this chart. December 21st is when the budget for FY23 is due to the select board and the finance committee. In January, we hold a budget hearing at a select board meeting. And then in late January, we have a joint meeting, which we've done for a few years now, with the advisory finance committee and also the select board to go over articles and then also the budget. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Again, my apologies to both of you for getting that important part. It is good that we did this. As you see, it sets the stage even more for what we're talking about tonight. And for those of you who are new here, as you saw, it's quite easy for these people at the front to get my attention. If you ever need to get my attention because you have a question about process, you can just call out point of order and I'll stop and answer your question. That's an important part of the process. We've already acted on Article 1, so we now turn our attention to Article 2, dealing with the fiscal year 22 Finance Department budget adjustment. Mr. Edinburgh.
Ellen Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $65,000 for the purpose stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Edinburgh.
So this article will fund a position, this article will fund a portion of the salary for fiscal 2022, October through June 30th, for the newly created grants administrator / procurement officer position in the finance department. This position is responsible for managing all grants, including reporting and compliance. Specifically, this position will oversee all use and reporting of the American Rescue Plan, ARPA, money allocated to the town of Westborough in response to the pandemic. The town also manages approximately 41 grants per fiscal year, not including those ARPA grants, which will take considerable amounts of time to manage and report on. This position additionally oversees and approves all procurement processes as the designated chief procurement officer. The town and the school issue approximately 100 purchase orders that are over $50,000 and approximately 250 purchase orders between the $10,000 and $50,000 thresholds. The town did receive pre-approval to use CARES Act funding for this position prior to the approval of the position. Late Friday afternoon, the town received notice that the request for funding was denied, even though it had been pre-approved. The town is following up with the Massachusetts Department of Administration and Finance on this decision, but we are requesting that the amended amount of $65,000 be approved to cover the salary if the rejection of this expense is confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Any questions, comments? Point of order, yes. Yes, the article is written as $45,000, but it does say or appropriate such other amount as town meeting may approve. Mr. Edinburgh has made a motion for $65,000, and since that such other amount is there, I am allowing the motion to go through at 65, with Mr. Edinburgh's explanation for why it changed. And could you just name and address, please, for the record? Andy Kenningsburg, sorry. That's just saved you a trip to the microphone. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Ms. Blumberg, Advisory Finance Committee. Okay, the Advisory Finance Committee is reporting that they voted in favor of the revised amount of $65,000. Thank you. Yes, name, address at the back, please. Oh, we've got to get the microphone from.
Hi, Neil Bach, 10 Arch Street. So it's interesting that it was initially pre-approved and that not approved. I was just wondering, it was granted for coronavirus relief funds, so would we not have brought this up at a prior meeting without thinking that it was going to be pre-approved? Is this a new position, or I'm just kind of curious how this came about?
Thank you. Ms. Williams? You have to push the button so the red is on. It means that it's on, I think, is what I was told. There you go.
This is a new position. It was approved and created by the select board at their July meeting. This was a position that we had been recommended to the town as an outcome of the non-public safety staffing study. It's also a position that we've identified for a very long time as a need that we have based on the volume of work that select board member Edinburgh described. So we were able to identify the need, and this was a clear, at the time, use of the coronavirus relief fund money. Other communities have used that CARES Act money for this exact purpose, to hire either an additional employee or hire a consulting service to help manage these grants, which require a very high level of reporting. So we were surprised to get the note that we did on Friday. Our expectation is that we will follow up and provide additional information, and that it will be approved because it was pre-approved. But assuming that it is not, that's why we are amending the motion this evening.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? You have a microphone? Thank you. Name and address, please.
Yep, Daniel Shore, 26 Haskell Street. Since this is a new position, right now we're only funding part of a year. What is the total full cost of this position, salary and benefits, that this would be going to future fiscal years?
Ms. Williams?
The annual salary is about $90,000. That's based on the criteria that we use in our classification plan. So when we create a new position, we use a rating scale for all of our positions to decide where it fits on the classification plan. That's based on experience, supervision, authority, education, and so that's where this sits. So this sits at an S6, and so that within that range is that $90,000 annual salary. And so you would see the full amount in next year's budget. If the individual were to take benefits, it's about $22,000 for health insurance, and then the town also pays a very nominal amount for life insurance. Other benefits are fully funded by the employee, and then of course we would pay whatever was required for the Worcester Regional Retirement.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no more, your action comes on Mr. Edinburgh's motion to raise and appropriate $65,000 for the purpose of this article. All those in favor, please raise your voting slip. Okay, put them down. All those opposed? I see a handful in opposition. However, the motion passes. It's a majority vote. Thank you. We now turn our attention to Article 3. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Ian Johnson, 9 Burtis Adams Way. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate the sum of $600,000 from free cash for the purpose stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Beginning in fiscal year 2015, the town funded OPEB, or other post-employment benefits, as was talked about earlier by Mr. Moretti, at $1.1 million per year in the insurance budget. In fiscal year 2021, the town reduced this line item to zero in response to the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, the town did not include any funding for OPEB in the fiscal year 2022 annual town meeting. This article in front of you would use free cash to restore a reduced level of funding this fiscal year, and then beginning in fiscal year 2023, the town anticipates a multi-year approach to restoration of this line item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Questions, comments? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion to transfer and appropriate $600,000 from free cash. All those in favor, please raise your voting cards, voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none opposed. We'll make that a unanimous vote. A majority vote is all that was necessary. Next, Article 4, a adjustment to the fiscal year 2022 school budget. Ms. Bach.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Amber Bach, 10 Arch Street, Superintendent of Schools. It's good to see all of you here. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $103 for the purposes stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
103,000.
103,000, thank you. I wish it was $103. That would make everyone really happy.
Sorry, everyone, but it would come up eventually.
I accept the correction. This article represents the request for $103,000 for 2 positions needed to support current operations and student services for the current FY22 school year. Should be noted that it's a lower amount as one of the 2 positions requested has been prorated against the original warrant article request for a November start allocation. I will provide a brief set of comments and then work off of questions. One of the 2 positions is a request for an ELL, English Language Learner position, an additional staffing request. This is a teaching position that supports students who come to district who require English language acquisition skills in order to attain their education within the Westborough Public Schools. We target an exit of service in 3 years, bringing students who come to us with English language needs and help to provide the development of their English language speaking and writing such that they can exit and thrive within the Westborough Public Schools without additional support needed. ELL students come to us leveled at different levels of need. Level 1, students who have no written or spoken English, through levels 3, where students have a range of skills and move through those ranges off into a monitor and independence. We have a robust and capable ELL team. They do an incredibly good job with our students and they exit and thrive in our district. Students carry a typical schedule through language development. While they are learning the language, they are functioning within a typical school year within a typical Westborough schedule. They are vibrant and capable learners who move quickly forward with English language support. We then have a subset of students who require extensive additional support, who have suffered from no or broken or interrupted schooling and often have both fragmented language as well as interrupted schooling. So we might receive a Gibbon student or a high school student who has had very little school experience, as well as suffering from the needs for also then having to learn the language. That requires an intensive set of special supports. That for Westborough is a relatively small percentage of our L students. The data that brings us here requesting an additional ELL teacher is that between our grades 4 through 12, between the close of the 2019-20 school year and the start of this fall school year, we have received 38 additional L students requiring service and delivery and support in order to gain their English language skills and writing and speaking. You can see in our comparable towns that Westborough is the 2nd largest in terms of ELL students at almost 12%. Hudson actually was surprisingly the next one. It used to be Lexington that comes in as the 3rd. Hudson has 12.8%. You see that across the staffing, we have an average in terms of the average per pupil ratio is about 20. With the additional position, you see that we're still around 23 students for our ratio of support for teachers to student need. Currently, that 19 teachers would be work all across our district, and that 19 would incorporate the addition of this new position. And you can see that would leave us still at the average of about 23 to 1 in terms of the support of students in teaching them their language skills. The second position is in our business office. Over the last 2 years, we've been able to work towards assessing our needs, and with the arrival of our new director of finance, he was able to work to look at our current staffing and face some of the challenges we have in managing the overload in the business office and the increase in errors that we've been seeing in terms of our work production. Currently, there's a director of finance, an assistant director of finance, and 3 workers who cover all of the financial and billing needs of the district. This is a slide that I think captures the reasoning for the request for the position. Westborough Public School staffing over the last 10 years has grown by about 25%. At town meeting, we have received amazing support from you as we have worked to enroll additional teachers over the past 10 years to support the growth of enrollment that we faced. At the same time, we haven't added internal staffing to support the operations required to support that 25% of faculty growth in the district. You see that I went as far back as my arrival in 2014. There was a director and 3 workers who did all the financial supports of our district. We added in my first year an administrative assistant to that office to support them, and 2 years later, we modified that position to make it an assistant director of finance and administration, able to do more higher level functions. However, we have not added any payroll support to this district in well over 10 years. At this point, our error rate and the amount of work that we're displacing to other offices is beginning to impact both our productivity as well as the overlap to the town operations. All of financial work that we share as a district overlaps to town hall. And when we're making mistakes on the ground on the school side, it also slows down and impacts the operation in Leah Talbot's office. And we're working to both improve our error rate and thus streamline some of the impact in their office as well. I think you see captured in these slides kind of an indicator that shows across 20 days of the month, as well as both the percentage of effort, that the actual work of payroll constitutes about 60% of the effort in about 12 days of the month for the worker that carries that job. Everything in red has been doled out across our offices to other IT support people, my assistant, and a range of other functional workers up on the Forbes floor, because this one person is not able to carry that work and accomplish rolling out payroll. Additionally, the blue bar there is our MTRS retirement rollover work, which is also carried by this person and is a backlog of several months. It's just work we simply can't get to regularly enough. When we look at this assessment, you see here that with the addition of that payroll specialist, we can begin to reconsolidate the work back from the pieces, parts of those other office arenas, centralize them with this payroll specialist, stabilize the workload across these individuals, and begin to reduce our errors and increase productivity. Across the last year and a half, while we've all been kind of in the holding pattern of COVID and the cuts that we contributed to the overall reductions you heard Christy about, we've been in a holding pattern. We've rolled over a person in this position currently during that time. The work just simply outstrips somebody willing to stay and do the position. We currently have a new person in the position, would like to stabilize them, cross-train them, and then add this additional position and hopefully stabilize the payroll office. Those are the 2 requests before you for the $103,000 through the remainder of the fiscal year of '22. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Yes. Can you get to your mic's coming.
Jerry McCullough, 27 Overlook Drive. I just have a couple of questions on the payroll side of things. You spoke of errors to reduce the error rates and stuff. I would think most of the employees are on salaries, so all that should be computerized, and as long as they're working, people approve it and it gets paid. So
Yep.
what's the difficulty?
No, that's a
set up
great
once
question.
and
Yeah.
once-
So municipal payroll is very complex. We have 7 contracts, and so there are multiple layers of differing payroll. And you also have, if somebody works an additional hour, say a paraeducator, their payroll has to be touched and changed. If they sub for us, their payroll gets touched and changed. So nothing about payroll rollover is standardized in the setting of schools. It's an exceptionally complex payroll, and you have to do so much manual adjustment and input to people's paychecks. Some of them are standard, but the majority of them require adjustments across the complexity of 7 varied contracts. You also have the payroll for coaches. You have payrolls for subs. You have payrolls across a whole variety of additional people that all flow through that one person.
Is there a follow-up, Mr. McCullough? Yes, sir? All right. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, our action comes on Ms. Bach's motion to raise and appropriate $103,000. Sorry, was there a question? Where? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you raise your hand. Or your voting. Please raise your voting slip so I can see you. Okay, thanks.
Michael Hyde, 42 Adams Street. I was curious, for the mention of increased productivity that this will bring, what kind of benefits will show up as a result of that increased productivity?
Leah Talbot will be much happier with us. And one of the things that David Gordon, Director of Finance, I'll let you stand, and we would introduce you to the town, our new Director of Finance and Administration, David Gordon. David has explained to me as well that when we have an error in the warrant, we have to do all the same work to do one correction that it takes to run the whole warrant. So it's our impact on error accurately creates problems on both sides. So as we streamline that, we gain the benefit of also expediting kind of a better function on the town side as well as the school side.
Thank you. Anyone else? And please raise your voting slip. It's hard to see hands. I can see the blue much better. This time, seeing none, our action comes on Ms. Bach's motion to raise and appropriate $103,000 for the purpose of the article as stated in the warrant. All those in favor of Ms. Bach's motion? Is there voting slips? Thank you. Down. All those opposed? I see a few opposed, but it is by far a majority vote. The motion carries. Next up, Article 5, the fiscal year 2022 DPW budget adjustment. Mr. Payant.
Chris Payant, Director of Public Works. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,733 for the purpose stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Payant.
So all of our town buildings are contract cleaned to some degree. The fire department right now is funded through a grant. That grant expires at the end of this year in December. And so this amount that's requested funds the cleaning of the fire department for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Payant. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, your action comes on Mr. Payant's motion to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,733 for the purpose of the article. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Next, Article 6, the fiscal year 2022 Conservation Department budget adjustment. Mr. Kenningsburg.
Andrew Kenningsburg, 3 Smith Street, Conservation Commission. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the purpose as stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Kenningsburg.
I'd like to bring Sherry Wittes, our Conservation Director, forward.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Sherry Wittes. I serve the town as the Conservation Director. This article speaks to reinstating $5,000 that was previously removed from the conservation budget due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The money will be used to manage the 2 new properties that we acquired in town, both the Day Prey and the Zwicker Farm, totally over about 100 acres of land.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Kenningsburg's motion to raise and appropriate $5,000 for the purpose as stated in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Okay. All those opposed? I see none opposed. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 7, fiscal year 2022 Police Department budget adjustment. Ms. Marshall.
Good evening, Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $79,727 for the purpose stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall. Chief Lowry?
Chief Lori, please.
Good evening, everybody. Jeff Lauria, Police Chief, and with me is Deputy Chief Minardi. I'm going to have him start off.
Hi, Todd Minardi, Police Chief, Deputy Chief of the Town of Westborough. So really, I just wanted to start by just saying initially, the decision to ask you for this position didn't come quickly and didn't come easily. Internally, we've been talking about this position for probably a couple of years. Externally with the town manager and the assistant town manager and her team, at least probably a year and a half. Every time we have discussions about staffing, we talk about how we can streamline our processes, and part of that is looking at the responsibilities of our two current lieutenants. And we really believe that creating this third lieutenant is going to help create a more streamlined process to accomplish the administrative tasks that they have to do. And I'll let the chief talk particularly to what those are.
So never in a million years could we imagine COVID and then you deal with POST. That's the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission. And our heads have been spinning as they really are not sure how this is going to all shake out. The deputy and I are going to be at in-service training in Norwood the rest of the week, and POST will be discussed. So when I came to you in the spring and I asked for the body camera funding, I kind of alluded to it may create a position because they basically encourage a position above a frontline supervisor to redact these videos. And you could have 3 or 4 officers on scene. It's going to be a ton of work just dealing with the Body Worn Camera Initiative. Then you throw POST into this. So, for instance, on September 30th, we had to submit all our internal affairs complaints to the POST Commission. And then the next day, they gave us till December 31st as an extension. They basically, when someone is injured, we have to report that to the state within so many hours. These are all new things that are coming that administratively our lieutenant's going to have to deal with. We revamped our entire policy procedure manual, and there's 8 we have to deal with right now to rewrite. All these subcommittees that are come into play, again, changing our policy and procedures. This lieutenant's position is going to be in charge of the accreditation process, policy and procedures, which I think is critical as we move forward dealing with POST. So there's going to be a significant impact, as I said, to the accreditation process and policy and procedures. All civilian complaints, internal affairs files have been submitted, and now they're telling us the forms may change, so we're going to have to resubmit. Any civilian injury must be reported to DPH. All training standards must be met. All training records must be submitted for certification. And officers may be decertified for misconduct or lack of maintaining training. The commission will have the power to investigate. So there's just a lot of things that are being thrust on your police department that we really need this help. We need this administrative person. I have selected the individual that will be promoted for this position. Sergeant Mike Daniels will be Lieutenant Michael Daniels. He'll be working the day shift, which is going to allow me to take the patrol division lieutenant and make him a night watch commander. It really bothers me that there's no one in the station right now. There's no one there. It's dark. Every morning when I come in, and I come in super early, the first thing I do is I do a security check of the station to make sure the station hasn't been breached, etc. So I really think this is a critical position, and like I said, we've been talking about this with the town and the staff, that with the body camera initiative that we've embraced, and the POST Commission, which by the way I embrace. I think standardized training and standardized policies and procedures are where we should be. I've been talking about this when I was a sergeant many, many years ago, that we should be have standards and we should be certified. And if an officer does something so egregious that they have to be decertified, they can't go find work in another agency because they're decertified. So I think in the end, this is going to work out well, but right now it's huge growing pains. I mean, even the commission itself. Luckily, I sit on a law enforcement council. It's all the presidents from all the regional law enforcement councils. And Chief Wynn from Pittsfield is on the POST Commission. So once a month, I have a one-on-one meeting with him with the other LEC chiefs to kind of really stay in the loop on this thing. But it's a lot. It's a lot on your police department, and I really hope you support this warrant article.
Thank you, both of you. Questions, comments? Mr. Bain?
Thank you, Chief. In the article, it's asking for $79,000 for this year, for FY22. What would be the total amount that we would expect to see for 23? In other words, this is a partial year request, is that correct?
Yes, so this will be a November 1st start date. So basically, you would have to add the rest of the calendar year to it next year. So you're probably looking at $130,000, $35,000.
All right, so ongoing, we're looking at about $130K plus increase, et cetera. Okay, that was my question. Thank you very much. I would support this.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Yes, down here. Mr. McCullough?
Jerry McCullough, 27 Overlook Drive. Chief, I was just wondering if you could give us an idea of the structure in the department as far as, are we starting to get too, what I'd call top-heavy and not enough officers at lower levels, or how does it all pan out in the department?
So in essence, we'll be 37. You'll have 37 police officers. You'll have a police chief, a deputy chief, 3 lieutenants, 5 patrol sergeants, and a detective sergeant. This is what we're dealing with now, is what's creating this position. Yes, do we need more officers? Absolutely, we do. But I didn't see this coming. If you were going to ask me 2 years ago as a chief that we were going to be dealing with some of the issues that we've dealt with, and we need help. We need help.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, our action comes on Ms. Marshall's motion to raise and appropriate $79,727 for the purpose stated in the article. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see a small number opposed. We'll declare that easily a majority vote. The motion carries. We now move to Article 8, Police Department Vehicle. Mr. Welch.
Patrick Welch, 15 Chauncey Circle. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $70,882 for the purpose of this article as printed in the warrant. Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Welch. And now Chief Lurie. Chief Lurie.
We do have a presentation if you want to see it, but what I'll say is we've embraced Sustainable Westborough. This will be an all-electric vehicle, and why the Ford? There's been some misconception that this is somehow a sports car. This is a small 4-door SUV. I can tell you that Mustang enthusiasts are not happy that they named it Mustang. This vehicle was vigorously tested by the Michigan State Police. They certify police vehicles that meet standards, so why didn't we go with a Tesla? I felt the optics of the Tesla wouldn't be good, but also it has not passed the Michigan State Police standards. So this is a police vehicle. What are we going to use this vehicle for right now? We're going to test it. Administrators, detectives will utilize these vehicles till we see if it works for patrol. But another misconception was that you have to charge this vehicle 6 to 8 hours a day. That's just not true. It's 6 to 8 hours a week. So basically, we're going to try this vehicle out. We think the short-term costs, yes, it's a little higher. The long-term costs, we're actually saving money. And quite frankly, there's no idling hours. We think these vehicles are going to last a very, very, very long time. So we're going to be the first department in town to have one. And I just want to remind everyone, when we're done with our vehicles, when we decommission them, just because they're not police roadworthy, they go to different departments in different towns. If we find that this vehicle is not conducive to what we're doing, I'll hand it off to Inspectional Services and we'll buy a hybrid. But we believe there's no CO2 in the emissions. We're all on board, Sustainable Westborough, and we hope you'll support this. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, the gentleman at the back.
Andrew Bradley, 2 Kimball. I'm going to propose an amendment to the motion, so I don't know if it's more appropriate to field questions first or to advance the amendment first.
Why don't you just state your amendment in case people want to talk about that too, and then we'll figure out, we'll let people talk about either or.
Sure, my
what's
amendment
your
will have the effect and intent of making this a non-electrical vehicle, and I'll speak to the chief directly about that when I go into details about my presentation, if I may.
So first of all, given that all the town meeting is doing is transferring appropriating free cash for an amount, the town meeting, you can ask for people to state whether they want an electric or not, but the town meeting, this vote does not compel nor not compel the purchase of an electric vehicle. The intent of all the town meeting does is to essentially provide money. Oh, sorry, I was thinking this was a budget amount. Never mind. So this does say an electric vehicle. So can you tell me the wording of your amendment?
So the specific changes would be to say, for the purpose of purchasing and equipping a non-electric vehicle,
okay,
and to strike the line that reads, and purchasing and installing a charging station.
Okay, so we'll get that and we'll talk. So why don't you make your case for that amendment as succinctly as you can?
I'll start by saying that I'm standing up here versus over with the AFC where I work. You'll notice that there's 3 other folks and an abstainee from the group who spoke to this, but I want to make sure folks know I'm speaking on my own behalf here. If there are other folks on the committee who'd like to speak up, they're very welcome to. And I also want to make sure I reinforce to the chief, I really value the chief and what he's doing. I believe the chief and the station needs a vehicle. My concern about the going electric with this position is that we've formed a recently completed master plan that we're working on that includes the specifics with regards to sustainability and climate change. And that group, I think, is responsible ultimately for determining a plan so that we can eventually move to a much more sustainable community through a lot of different investments we're going to be making. I know that there's an option here to make the Ford Mustang Mach-E Premier and all-wheel drive extended range the first vehicle, and I understand a forward-looking chief like the one we have has a lot of reason to want to go out doing this. I just believe procedurally, as a town, we're beholden better forward, working with a group who's going to align the entire assets and plan of the town to move forward. And if in time the decision is made that the police department is supposed to be the first vehicle and is the best candidate for the first electrical vehicle, I'm behind it 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. All right, so I will now entertain discussion on either, just to see how this goes, and then we'll decide if we want to focus that. I'll entertain discussion on either Mr. Bradley's amendment or the main motion, and then we'll see how it goes. So let's see. Mr. Gold, is that you? Microphone's over here. I'm assuming there's nobody in the gym, right, Mr. Gold? Thank you.
Ben Gold, 19 Blake Street. I'm going to speak against the amendment and for the electric vehicle. The difference in cost, as I recall, between a gasoline police cruiser and this cruiser is not significant, maybe $10,000. I don't know, maybe we can talk to that, but why not? Like, we don't need a master plan. We don't need to be ready to go. We need to be making steps now. This is not a significant increase. Like, if you said, okay, you know, the entire car, maybe, the increase in cost here is minimal for us taking steps now to, you know, get to a more sustainable place. So I'm going to be against the amendment. For the electric car, I love the idea of giving it a try. And as he noted, he's not the first police station to put this under. I like the idea that it was from Detroit, you know, similar weather conditions, cold. I think it's a good idea. So I speak against the amendment and for the car, the electric car. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, this gentleman at the microphone.
Pete Dunbeck, 8 Wayside Road, and the chair of Sustainable Westborough. We had Chief Lowry come to the Sustainable Westborough meeting and provide the details of his plans and the economics of it and the discussion concerning Tesla versus the Ford and so forth. had a pretty detailed discussion and unanimously voted to support this motion and therefore oppose the amendment. The economics on this I'd call pretty neutral. It's not a home run. It's not going to save the town a lot of money, but it doesn't cost a lot of money, and it is very much in line with the goals of the master plan and the climate action plan to move to a more carbon-free solution set. And it does not cost the town money in the long run. There's, as the chief said, there's more capital cost up front, but the lower operating cost payback in a very reasonable time. And it makes a very strong case.
Thank you. Any other discussion on either? We'll go up front here. You want to just go to the microphone over here? Mr. Silverberg?
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. I'm going to speak against the amendment and do my best to be political or polite. So this amendment wouldn't save the town any money. The amendment doesn't propose changing the amount at all. It just proposes telling the town buy a gas vehicle instead of buying an electric vehicle. I just can't imagine why we wouldn't at least give the town the option to buy an electric vehicle. If you had proposed an amendment, or if someone had proposed an amendment saying take out the word electric and just put a vehicle and give the town some discretion as to what the best vehicle was, I might support that. But to just eliminate electric vehicle altogether from the equation just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I can't imagine that this wasn't a thought out and a decision that was made instantaneously. The town has definitely decided that the direction we want to go in is electric vehicles. I support the original motion and I'm against the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Patrick Welch, 15 Chauncey Circle. I'll just remind the community that I believe it was in 2018 we adopted to join the Green Communities Act, and this actually will help us towards the goals of the plan of the Green Community Act, at which we actually have to maintain a vehicle fleet that aligns to Sustainable Westborough's goals. So just keep that in mind. This is going to lead to good things in the long run in regards to maintaining that commitment to the state and to our community.
Thank you very much. Since we're focusing on the amendment now, why don't we just focus all our discussion on the amendment, then we'll vote on that, then we'll have any more discussion. Yes, Mr. Koenigsberg.
Yes, Andrew Koenigsberg, 3 Smith Street. I am not on Sustainable Westborough, but I was one of the authors of the Climate Action Plan. The Climate Action Plan talks specifically about strategies, including having town departments start to use electric vehicles as a way of demonstrating to the town what electric vehicles can do for the town and how they will work and how they can benefit the town. So the plan that Chief Lurie has presented, in which he provided great detail on the economics to Sustainable Westborough, is exactly what the Climate Action Plan and exactly what Sustainable Westborough wants to be accomplishing here. So I do not support the amendment. I think the amendment makes no sense based on what we've already done, the Climate Action Plan and Sustainable Westborough. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Lauer, are you waiting to
the only thing I'll say is, and I appreciate the support, is, I mean, you hired me as your police chief. I would like to think 4 years later, you trust me that I do my homework. You know, my integrity is very important to me, and I believe this will work. One of the reasons why I went with the Ford instead of the Tesla as well, because there were some people in town who were encouraging me to go for the Tesla. If I need a part for the Ford, I can get that part, like a headlight or something that DPW can fix, and you know, DPW Director Payne's team will take care of that repair instead of waiting for the Tesla part to come in and then paying them how much money an hour to install that part. So we really did our homework on every aspect of this vehicle, you know, and I think, in my humble opinion, this is going to work, and I hope that you believe in me as your police chief, that I come before you only when there's a need, and this isn't a nice to have, this is us trying to do what's right for the environment, embracing where Westborough is going, Sustainable Westborough, in being as cost effective as we can, getting a $7,500 grant from the feds to offset some costs. When I did my PowerPoint presentations, I showed you a regular gas Explorer. Add $5,000 if it's a hybrid to it. So we believe, doing our homework with my fleet maintenance team, that this will be a vehicle that administration will definitely embrace, but we're going to try it out. We're going to test it out. And if it turns out that it's not for us, which I think it will be, I really do, we'll turn it over. I'm sure Mr. Leonardo would love to drive around in this vehicle. So hopefully you don't support the amendment. You support the article. I really appreciate your support of Article 7. I mean, we've really been up against it the past couple of years, and it's going to make a huge difference, and I hope you support this as well. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Hyde. Yes, go. Yes.
Nope, I'm sorry.
No, you go.
Daniel Shore, 26.
Oh, sorry, there's Mr. Shore. Thank you, sorry.
Quick question. What is the size of the current fleet of the police department, and what are the metrics used to add another vehicle? I know staff has grown. What is the tipping point of when you add another vehicle?
So, yeah, we're just north of a 20 vehicle fleet. Probably 10 to 12 are patrol cruisers. I can get you that exact data. I wish I had it with me today. This would be a take-home vehicle for an administrator. And we add a vehicle when we add 3 positions to the department. So we add a vehicle to the fleet when we add 3 positions to the department. We try to rest our cruisers for at least 1 shift because they do a lot of idling hours. Sometimes we can't. But that's why we're going to test this vehicle out with the department and see if we can transition it to patrol. But we feel we need a lot more vehicles because we have charging time.
Mr. Bradley, are you waiting to respond, or are you just, in case there's questions?
I think it's to follow up on a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if it's Conservation, or Conservative Westborough, or Chief Laurie, but we've talked about tracking this and trying it out. Was any discussion made about making sure we can track these individual expenses so we can come up with a quantifiable, specifically enumerated result of a report that can tell us the difference in costs? Was there anything from the Sustainability Commission that said we should be tracking against these metrics?
I don't know. All I can tell you is there's going to be the related costs for the vehicle are going to be significantly less. There's no transmission, there's no oil, there's no idling time. This is a newer vehicle. It is in service. Topsfield PD just purchased one. They're waiting to take, and that's the other thing, it's going to take months and months and months for this vehicle to come in. That's why we want to get going now on it. But it is in service in Michigan, and if you read the articles, you Google them, they love it. So it is working as a police vehicle in other parts of the country. This is new technology with Ford. So you're right, there's going to be a learning curve to it. We're going to have to figure things out moving forward, but we believe it will work.
Thank you. I saw Mr. Harrington first, Mr. Baines, so could someone bring the microphone to Mr. Harrington over here? Or if he can get it. Okay, you're moving the amendment? Amendment, okay. So Mr. Harrington is moving the question on the amendment. Moving the question is a motion that means we vote right now whether to stop debate. So this is essentially to terminate debate on the amendment. It requires a 2/3 vote, and if it passes, we go straight to a vote on the amendment, and then we will take up the main motion. So with that said, we're voting now. When I ask for a vote in favor is a vote in favor of Mr. Bradley's amendment, which is to change the electric vehicle to non-electric and to strike the phrase about the charging station. So yeah, sorry. So yes, but I'm just explaining what the purpose is. The vote to terminate debate, sorry. So we're terminating debate. So that's what the amendment is, and we would terminate debate on that. So first of all, show of hands, terminate debate. Then I'll explain in a minute. Thank you for that, Ms. Marsh. Thank you. All those opposed to terminating debate? We have a few in opposition, but it is a 2/3 vote. Debate has been terminated on the amendment. Now we move to the amendment. The amendment that we have before us is Mr. Bradley's amendment. A vote in favor now is a vote in favor of Mr. Bradley's amendment, which would be to change the electrical to non-electrical and to strike the phrase about the charging station. So a vote in favor is a vote in favor of Mr. Bradley. A vote opposed would essentially say, leave the main motion untouched and we'll go to debate about the main motion. Understand? All those in favor of Mr. Bradley's amendment, please raise their voting slips. All those opposed? It is by far more than a 2/3 vote, but it's only a majority vote. So the amendment is defeated. Okay, we now move discussion to the main motion, which is to transfer and appropriate $70,822 for the article as it's written. That includes the electric vehicle, includes the purchasing and installation of a charging station. Is there discussion on the main motion? I see someone at the back microphone. Name and address, please, and then your question or your comment.
Hi, Becky Dolan, 500 Union Street. And I just have a question for the chief. So I've been in town for a few years now, and what I've noticed is that the police cars that we have are kind of intimidating, and they're not friendly, they're not approachable, and I just wonder if this is an opportunity for you to rethink that vibe that we're giving off. So I know you want to get the Mustang, and it sounds like you have very good reason for it, and I'm 100% in support of electric vehicles. I think this is great. I just think this might be a chance to rethink how we design the exterior of the car.
This is an unmarked vehicle? It's an administrator vehicle?
Okay.
It's not marked.
So there's no lights, there's no,
No.
it's going to be blacked out?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment on the main motion? Yes, down here, microphone down here, please. It's coming. Thank you, Mr. Mascheroni.
Wilfred Savoy, 41 Chestnut Street. I see that 3 members of the Finance Advisory Committee have voted against this. I'd like to hear from that group, if I may, on that.
Okay. We'll have Mr. Beretti explain the vote. Mr. Beretti.
I think Mr. Bradley summed up the feelings of the 3 members who voted against the article as it was presented. Well, there was opposition to an electric vehicle for the police department. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Beretti. Any other discussion, comments, questions? Seeing none, our action comes on the main motion made by Mr. Welch to vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $70,882 for the purpose of the article. All those in favor, please raise their voting cards. Thank you. All those opposed? I see a few in opposition, but the majority definitely carries, so the motion carries. Thank you very much. We now turn to Article 9. The fiscal year 2022 golf course budget adjustment. Ms. Travis.
Yes, Beth Travis, 65 Adams Street. I'm on the Recreation Commission. I move that the town vote to rescind that portion of the vote taken on Article 2 of the May 15th, 2021 annual town meeting, establishing the golf course budget for fiscal year 2022, and in its place, vote to appropriate $653,178 from the enterprise revenues to fund the country club enterprise.
Thank you, Ms. Travis. Ms. Kirkland.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. So the golf course retained earnings were certified at $401,822 at the end of FY21. Because the revenues came in as high as they did, we, the town, are now able to increase the revenue estimate to cover the entire FY22 budget, which would include the next article for credit card fees, but we'll get there. This was not possible before the Springtown meeting because certain revenues had never been recognized by the town under the previous management model. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkland. your chance to rescind, to raise and appropriate, and to replace it with a transfer from an enterprise fund. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, your action comes on Ms. Travis's main motion to vote to rescind the portion of the article about the country club at the May annual town meeting and replace it with a vote to appropriate the amount shown to fund the country club enterprise fund. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I don't see any opposed. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 10, the fiscal year 22 golf course budget adjustment, part 2. Again, Ms. Travis.
Beth Travis, 65 Adams Street, Recreation Commission. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $11,000 to the Country Club Enterprise for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Ms. Travis. Again, Ms. Kirkland.
Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. So we're seeking $11,000 to add to our budget for credit card fees. These fees are built into the costs that are projected onto the customer, but we still need a line in our budget to pay out these fees every month.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, our action comes on Ms. Travis's motion to raise and appropriate $11,000 to the Country Club Enterprise Fund. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none, we'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Country Club Part 3, Article 11, Golf Course Pump System. Ms. Travis.
Beth Travis, 65 Adams Street, Recreation Commission. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from the Country Club retained earnings the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Ms. Travis. Again, Ms. Kirkland.
Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. So we're seeking $50,000 from the Country Club retained earnings to replace the irrigation pump system at the golf course. This pump system is used to irrigate the golf course. It is our primary watering source. Without a reliable irrigation system, the course would eventually become unplayable. The current pump is at least 35 years old. The mechanical component of our pump station, the pumps and the motors, have failed repeatedly over the last 5 years. We are spending significant sums of money on repair costs and have been warned by several vendors that we're going to be paying more or even possibly not be able to fix a problem because we're operating such an old system. After the pump is replaced, it'll be in place for at least 20 to 25 years. The first 10 years, the pump is very reliable with minimal issues. After the 10-year mark, the system becomes a little less reliable and the system may require services for things like a clogged pipe or other moderate maintenance needs. When you approach the 20-year mark, that's when you should look into replacing it again.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkland. Again, for those of you new to town meeting, this is to transfer and appropriate from a retained earnings fund, which is the money that the country club has brought in, and the town meeting needs to authorize to transfer it for a particular use. Any discussion? Yes, sir. Down in the fourth row from the back, Mr. Meshrader.
Cheryl Thomas, 62 Adams Street. Hi. I'm just curious, is this money going to be just for the materials of the system, or does it include labor, or is our own town folk able to do the installation, or what?
No, it would be for everything, for labor, installation. We'd have a vendor come out. It's a pretty in-depth process.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, our action comes on Ms. Travis's motion to transfer and appropriate the sum shown on the screen, the motion shown on the screen. All those in favor, please raise your voting card. Thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none, we'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 12, Fire Alarm Infrastructure. Mr. Keough.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Keough, you turning it over to Chief Purcell, or are you going to handle it?
Yes, I will.
All right. Chief Purcell, there he is.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Purcell. I serve as your fire chief here in the town of Westborough. I bring before you Article 12 tonight, and my opening picture here on the screen shows the Westborough Fire Station as it was built day one, and that was in 1888. Within the building, we had a fire alarm control room that we allowed properties in town, primarily businesses, to wire their fire alarm direct to the fire station. I'm not sure if this is one of the wires or not you see going across by the tower, but that's the best I could do for a picture from day one. So our current infrastructure stretches over 94,000 feet here in the town of Westborough. We transitioned away from a municipal fire alarm system that was hardwired somewhere between 2005 and 2008, and we went to a system that transmitted alarms into the fire station through radio signals, so it went like through the air. And at that time, we abandoned the fire alarm wire that exists on the telephone poles that you see in town. If you look at this pole, Mark, which one's the pointer here? If you look at the picture here, this right here, I'm sorry the picture's not more clear. This is an abandoned fire alarm box. This is the wire that's cut off of one side, and the wire continues down Otis Street on this side. The fire department made an attempt in between 2005 and 2008 to take some of the wire down ourselves. We had a bucket truck. Unfortunately, that was frowned upon by OSHA. And frankly, as I've stated in front of the selectmen and the finance committee and in my notes and the article itself, we really have no business up in this area trying to remove our own wire. It's very, very risky. This is just like another example. So if you see when you're driving around town, this is another one from Otis Street. You see that the existing wire that's there, that's dead, starts to shred. Okay, and we get calls all the time for low-hanging wires when it's just the sheathing around the outside that's broken down. Another one here is this. This is another example right there. That's Westborough Fire Department wire right there. So the problem with all the wire being up in this space is if you have a double pole in your neighborhood or you're driving around and see double poles, we may be the reason for that. Sometimes you see a telephone pole that is cut up high and a new one is installed if one gets hit or if there's a construction project that goes on. We also may be the reason for that. So based on the amount of calls that we get, and we have piecemealed some work here and there with funds that were available through a company to take down some of the wire, we're looking at, tonight to ask you for funding to get the wire down once and for all and put this to rest. Mass DOT's done a lot of work on Route 9. We were in their way. Some of the other big projects like Otis Street, we were in their way. It's all over town, and frankly, it's becoming a nuisance. We did get 3 quotes, and our cheapest one was here from a company called FiberTech. I'm sorry, from FiberTech Services. They also work with the town a lot, hanging our fiber which connects the computer systems in our radio network for public safety together. The lowest quote was $19,000 to take that down. We're asking for $30,000 tonight because we're not exactly sure how long it's going to take, but we will be required to hire police details for part of it, as well as supply dumpsters and money for disposal.
Thank you, Chief Purcell. Questions, comments on the motion? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Keogh's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of the article as stated in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise your voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. We'll declare it a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 13, Fire Department and Dispatch Software. Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $33,000 for the purposes of the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Again, Chief Purcell.
Hi again. Patrick Purcell, serving as your fire chief here in the town of Westborough. So Deputy Fire Chief Jason Fursky is going to present this article to you tonight. As he has done throughout the beginning of the fall here to the Finance Committee and to the Board of Selectmen. But before he does so, I just wanted to draw some attention to something. I made 2 mistakes. on the article, and I wanted to apologize for that. The first one is actually the second red area. I didn't complete a sentence. I don't know how I did that, if I got interrupted for a call or someone came into my office, where it says, although this software has fared well for Westborough Police, it is not intended for use by fire departments and therefore is difficult. The remaining of that sentence was to be used efficiently. The reason why I'm bringing this before you tonight is I want you to have a very clear picture on what you're voting on, and I want to be as transparent as possible. The second, my second error is also in red, where it says that this is IMC is police software. I interpret IMC as police software. Technically, they do have a fire module. Right now, the Westborough Police uses IMC as they have. They were one of the first buyers of that in April of 1990. That's how long that's been used as police. And we bought a small module of that when we combined the dispatch centers together. But if you'll give Deputy Firsky an opportunity to present, I think he'll answer any questions that you might have about that going forward.
Thank you. Deputy.
Good evening. Thank you, Chief, for the opportunity to present. So I think it's important to look at why we're trying to make the change, so we look at some of the historical background on where we started. So our original reports, which we still have an entire file room full of paper reports, up until about the early 90s. Then we had our first computer software program that came out for us. It was a 4D client. We used that up until about 2016. The benefit we had is that one of our firefighters, Matt Stockwell, was very well versed in that program, so he was able to kind of help us through. But if Matt wasn't around, we really struggled to kind of input data or, more importantly, pull data out. In 2016, we combined, the fire department took over the dispatch center, so we moved it to the fire department. The police department was already using IMC, and kind of in true fire department spirit, we said, well, we're going to try to make it work for us. And here we are in 2021 telling you that it doesn't work for us, and there's a whole host of reasons. The first reason, that the way the fire department operations work, it's not really a single platform. We're required to have EMS software, notification for our members during an emergency, or to call them back to the station in the event of an emergency. We're trying to link our fleet maintenance programs. IMC just isn't capable of doing that for us. Right now, we've tried to increase technology so that the first responding engines have technology available to have information about safety hazards, where lock boxes are, the ability to, any safety hazards with a laptop in front of in the front of the apparatus. Unfortunately, the IMC platform is very small and difficult to read. It's not very user-friendly. And then the town employs a bunch of different software programs, whether it be inspectional services using Permit Pro or the assessors database using Patriot Properties. IMC doesn't communicate back and forth across those platforms. So why are we looking to make this change today? The first one is you hear the chief talking about constantly trying to increase our ISO rating. We've done a pretty good job over the last few years. We've gone from a 4.4x to a Class 2. In the words of ISO, that's pretty much unheard of to make that much of a jump in one evaluation. We're right on the cusp of attaining our Class 1 rating. This software is going to allow us to get a few of the points that we're missing. Pre-planning is an important component. The pre-planning component of that automatically goes into the assessors database. It pulls over all the properties and starts to help us create this pre-planning database, which is worth significant points on the ISO rating. Emergency response, it's going to increase the level of knowledge and information that our frontline officers have, or firefighters responding to a call or the ambulance. Fire prevention is another component in there that's going to link in through Permit Pro and pull the information that our inspectors are doing. It'll give anytime that we go out and cite a hazard in a facility, we'll be able to pull that report into our report. I'll come back to Community Connect in a minute, because I think that's one of the coolest components. Incident reporting, so it's going to take our incident reporting software and put it into this program. It's going to simplify and streamline, make it easier for our officers to complete their reporting. Scheduling, currently scheduling, we have 4 different working groups. Each group pretty much maintains their own calendar. Some of them have Google calendars, some of them use regular software. Nobody has an easy way to communicate with IMC. IMC is a server-based program. The only access that they have to it is when they're in the fire station. Moving to this cloud-based program, our officers will have access to the program remotely from where they're working. It'll improve personnel records and accountability. And then another area where we struggled with ISO was in training records. We're doing the training. We have the training records. It's not in the format that they like, so they got fussy and didn't give us all the points. This is going to allow us to kind of streamline that and connect everything together. The Community Connect, I think the chief does a great job with community outreach. During the pandemic, you heard him on doing the Code Red reports every Sunday on our fireside chats. He did a great job with that. The Community Connect program is another branch of that, so it's going to allow us to interact even more closely with the community. So you'll be able to log in, whether you be a business owner or a resident, and if you want to let us know that you have certain hazards, hey, I have a disabled family member that sleeps on the second floor, I have a lockbox, I have a garage door access code, I'm a business owner and I need to update my contact list because my work staff has changed or rotated through, I can update my records in real time. So that's another way of us being able to reach out and branch out to the community and influence every day. And this is the part where I'm going to just touch it on the 3,000-foot elevation because I am not a computer guy. My wife is probably at home laughing with me trying to give a computer presentation. So the neat thing about this program is it's cloud-based. Currently we have servers in the fire station where we maintain all of our own servers, and it's hosted within the fire department. This new program will switch to a cloud-based format, and it's hosted by an SSAE 16 Type 2 audit. That's a very fancy way of saying that they're under extreme amount of scrutiny on how they handle security and the privacy of our data. The other neat thing is that they preach is a 99.95% uptime. So there's virtually no downtime with this program. Any downtime is scheduled, and they actually have the ability to switch us from the cloud-based server in Miami, they switch it over to Los Angeles, or they bounce it around, so we will actually see virtually no downtime. This is a much prettier picture of everything that I talked about before. It's kind of basically taking all of our stuff that's scattered everywhere and putting it onto one platform. Another component that we rely on is the ambulance reporting software. We currently use a third system for the ambulance software. This company's in the process of developing a software that's going to allow us to link everything together. So our goals, anytime we establish or come before you with something, we have a list of goals that we're looking for a positive outcome with this. So we're looking to increase responder safety. It's getting the knowledge and the information more usable to our company officers. There's also a cost savings. Currently we use Toughbook laptops in the front of the fire apparatus and the ambulances. This is going to allow us to switch to iPads, so it's about a $3,000 to $4,000 savings. We're looking to continue to increase our ISO rating. We're really determined to get us that Class 1 rating. It's improving the efficiency of our operations. It's kind of streamlining it so that all of our platforms talk across the same medium, so we're not having to bounce from one program to another program to perform our daily work. Increasing the overall quality of our technology, and then we want to always and continue to enhance our resiliency, redundancy, and the security of the information that we maintain.
Thank you very much. Discussion on Mr. Edinburgh's motion, or follow up by Chief Purcell, or is he just
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, Chief Purcell.
Sure, thank you very much. Selectman Johnson asked me to address you if you're wondering what an ISO rating is. It's the Insurance Services Office. They evaluate us once every 5 years. They look at things like the water department, which is managed by the Public Works, the fire department, and the dispatch capability in town. And they use a rating system, and the number that they come up with directly affects your insurance premiums overall, not just fire, for your homes. So the better job that we do, and he does the majority of the work, the more money we save you in insurance. So really that's the basis of what ISO is about.
Thank you. Questions concerning this article, Mr. Edinburgh's motion? Yes, front row here, right next to you, Mr. Masharelli. Name and address, please, and then your question.
Hi, Bill Panis, 21 Maynard Street. I don't have any particular problem with the software. It sounds pretty useful. And I'm not a computer expert either, but once you go to cloud-based, you're relying on the internet. So what happens if you lose internet, as we do from time to time? Do you have a redundant connection to the internet? Do you have two connections to different internets? What if our central server, wherever it is in town, has a fire?
So I'm going to take a stab at trying to answer it correctly without messing up, and if I start to go astray, please correct me. So there is redundancy built into the system, so if it doesn't connect right away, it'll continue to try to connect, but it also allows us to work offline without, it kind of commingles all of our data, and once it reconnects and gets its connection back, it kind of updates and catches up. But the gist of my...
Okay. What was that? Okay.
What if you actually lose the physical connection to the internet, which is coming out of your building through some structure that's hung on a telephone pole, and a truck just took down the entire telephone pole? So it's not going to be there. How do you dispatch anybody?
We do have redundancy in our system, so we do have multiple different internet connections. So if we lose one, we do have redundancy built into that system.
There was also mention of an offline mode, right? You said, so you have access to some, you said there's an offline mode as well?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Edinburgh's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash $33,000 for the purpose of the article. All those in favor, please raise your voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 14, tuition reimbursement. Mr. Johnson.
Ian Johnson, 9 Burtis Adams Way. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, real quickly here. This article funds tuition reimbursement to meet the town's obligations under the collective bargaining agreements and the personnel policies. As many as you know, this funding is typically requested under the regularly recurring articles at the annual town meeting. However, as we look forward, we are anticipating requests in fiscal year 2022 that will exceed the current balance voted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Questions, comments on Mr. Johnson's motion or the topic of this article? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $30,000. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. A unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 15, stormwater infrastructure improvements. Back to Mr. Pand.
Chris Pant, Director of Public Works. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $167,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. Mr. Pand.
So I know we're all anxious to get out of here, but I do want to take a minute just to give some context to this request and offer it not only as an opportunity to help you, encourage you to vote for this article, but also give some idea of what's happening with some of our infrastructure around town. So up on the screen, you've obviously got a map and a chart on the right. So I'll start off on the map and just give you some context as to what we're talking about. So this is downtown is up here on this map. You have Upton Road, and this is our reservoir, Sandra Pond. There's this stream that runs through our town called Jackstraw Brook. It's pretty significant. Along that brook are three culverts, at least that we're talking about tonight. So at the bottom here is Bowman Lane, which we'll be talking about in just a minute, and that's what the money is addressing. There's a culvert here at Warren Street, and then there's another set of culverts here at Upton and Morse Roads. And so the reason for the request tonight is to ask for some money to design a culvert to replace the culvert that exists here at Bowman Lane. So if you can see on the right side of the screen, there's 3 tables. So to replace a culvert is not just a one-time place some money, we're done. It's a series of steps. So first we need to do some analysis and just figure out what the problem is. That's the assessment. Then there's a design. Once you figure out what you want to do, you have to pay an engineer to design the culvert, and then you have to actually build the culvert. And so it's multiple stages, occurs over a long period of time. We started this process way back in 2015 with the Warren Street culvert, which was replaced at that time or adjusted at that time. In the past year, we received grants for both Bowman Lane and Morse Upton culverts to do the assessments. So you can see on the chart, the Upton Morse assessment is ongoing, and we've completed the Bowman Lane assessment that was completed earlier this year. So for Bowman Lane, we've moved on to the next step, which is design. And so out of the $167,000 we're asking for, this is all for stormwater infrastructure improvements, but about $115,000 of that would go towards the design of this culvert. And then, mentioned earlier by Mr. Beretti, there's significant costs in the future that have to do with our infrastructure. And so the next step after we design this culvert for $115,000 is to pay for the actual installation, which is several $100,000. But that's down the road, and we'll come to that when we get there. But the point is we need to get the process started, and that's what we're here to do tonight. So we're asking for you to support this money, which will fund a design of the replacement at Bowman Lane, and then we'll take steps from there after we get that done. The second piece of the article is another focus area for us, which is our stormwater permit. So the Department of Environmental Protection issues a permit to all towns in Massachusetts, and that's directed by the EPA to do certain things, and that permit is a 5-year implementation plan. We're in year 3 right now, and every year there's a series of requirements we have, and this year there's a number of requirements we have, but one that we're focusing on particularly that requires additional funding is the update. We're titling it Update of Our Bylaws, but really it's more extensive than that. It's not just changing a few words in a document and asking you to vote on it. It's updating our bylaws, creating some stormwater regulations, and also building some design specifications. And again, these are all mandates from our stormwater permit. So it's not necessarily an option for us, it's a requirement. So that is what we're asking for in terms of what you'll see we get out of this $167,000 we're asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Questions, comments? Yes, gentleman moving to the microphone over here.
Hello, I'm David Buffo, 21 K Street. Thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering, I have 2 questions. One, if you could just comment a bit about the problems that are alluded to in the article here in this area, and that you mentioned very briefly. If you could just expand on that a little bit. So that's just a...
Yep, so specifically at Bowman Lane, the culvert is deteriorated, and there's a number of structural issues with the culvert that need to be replaced. There's sewer and water infrastructure that runs under and above the culvert, and there's obviously a road there. So all of the things that I know I'm going to talk about anytime I come here is related to risk and how we mitigate risk. And so is this culvert going to fail tomorrow? Probably not, but it will at some point, and we want to address it before that happens. And so based on the engineers that have done the analysis of this culvert, it's been identified as one that we should address sooner rather than later.
Great. Thank you. If I may add a second question. These assessments that the engineers are doing, I'm just curious to what extent they have factored in the effects of climate change with increased rainfall and more severe storms, Is that being factored into our thinking around stormwater analysis?
It is. The answer is yes, although these, especially these two assessments that were just completed, since they were state grants that were the funding source, were directed to use specific hydraulic models and FEMA requirements for flooding. So it's as updated as that guidance is updated, I guess is my point. So I think we all, well, maybe everybody has their own opinion, but I certainly think there's some things we need to pay attention to in terms of climate. We're trying to do that as best we can, but we are guided by the existing regulations that are out there that we have to abide by. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments related to this article or this motion? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Payant's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash $167,000 for the purpose as stated in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise your voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. That's a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 16, generator purchase for the DPW. Mr. Payant.
I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate the sum of $13,000 from free cash, transfer and appropriate the sum of $13,000 from water retained earnings, and transfer and appropriate the sum of $13,000 from sewer retained earnings for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Payant.
So we have a number of pump stations, both sewer and water, around the town, and actually Jen Kirkland, who was up here earlier talking about the golf course pump station, is another one. So all of those stations are hardwired to our electric grid, but they also have backup power through generators. We have 3 generators on order right now for our sewer pump stations. The delivery dates associated with those generators are in the 9 to 13 month range. One of those generators is currently not working. So a interim solution that we've identified after exhausting all other options is to purchase a used generator that's mobile that we can move to various sites as necessary to provide backup power if required. And that's what this funding would allow us to do. It's divided, as I read in the motion, between 3 different funding sources, and that's because we have town infrastructure that your tax dollars pay for, and we also have water and sewer infrastructure that the ratepayers pay for. This generator would be available to support all of those things, so that's why we've split the cost between these 3 different sources.
Thank you. Questions, comments on this article, this motion, this topic? Seeing none, sorry, Mr. Silverberg. Can you just step to the microphone? Thank you. That's okay.
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. Since you're purchasing a used generator, are you expecting to surplus it once the new generators come in? Or is that going to be kept? You're going to keep? Okay, thanks.
The intent is not to surplus this. So the question was, we get our new generators in, now do we get rid of the one we just bought? The answer is no, that's not the intent. The intent is to have a mobile emergency capability, so if randomly a tree falls on a generator somewhere in town, we've got the immediate capability to go out and provide power. Certainly renting is an option, and we actually did that earlier this year with the golf course pump station, and we're looking at about a $5,000 a week bill to rent a generator. So, in the course of close to a month, you're going to pay for your generator, the used generator that I'm asking to purchase.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this article, this topic, this motion? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Payant's motion to transfer and appropriate $13,000 from 3 different places as shown in the motion. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none, we'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. We now turn our attention to Article 17, an amendment to the general bylaws, Article 25, alcoholic beverages. Mr. Keogh.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sean Keogh, 5 Yorkshire Circle. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Remarks?
Yes. This article will amend the alcohol beverages section of the general bylaws to authorize the select board to approve a permit to allow alcohol to be consumed on town property. The amendment will allow the select board to authorize alcoholic possession and consumption at events being held in public buildings and on other town property. And this amendment will further clarify that the select board can authorize consumption on public ways. This will be beneficial as the town explores allowing restaurants to use public parking spaces and or sidewalks for outdoor seating.
Right. Questions or comments for Mr. Keogh? Yes, in the back. Can you get to a microphone? I don't see. Name, address, and then state your question.
Richard Krinsky. I live at 16 Kings Grant Road.
I didn't get your name. What?
I'm sorry?
I said I didn't hear your name. I'm sorry.
Richard Krinsky.
Okay.
I live at 16 Kings Grant Road in Westborough, Mass.
Thank you.
I've lived there for 32 years, 26 of which were very pleasant before the Coal Harbor Brewery moved in, and the town has totally failed to rein that in to become a responsible business for people that abut, for people that have a outdoor bar room in their backyard. I'm further offended by the lack of transparency as this is written up in the articles. I don't know why I had to read to learn what this is all about. Westborough Planning Board supports warrant article amending alcohol bylaws. So anything like this can help these businesses stay afloat. I think it's important. Why did I have to learn this? Why is there a total lack of transparency? My experience has been, I don't know why the town wants to encourage outdoor drinking when the one model that they have has been a total disaster. You want outdoor speakers at 8 p.m. in your yard, and you think that's good? You can't even go out. I can't even go out into my own yard without hearing their speakers, without hearing their noise. Recently, I was told that there was urinating out there. The town's response was, why don't you put up a porta potty? Can anyone comment on that? Is that true, that there was urinating out there? And I say, until the town can get this one business under control, vote this down. If you're a homeowner like me, total lack of transparency, get it into the warrant correctly so that people know what's going on. Also, I'm upset that the planning board last year went to Cold Harbor and worked with them to expand their business with no notice to the abutters. I'd like to say to Mr. Robbins, if he's here, didn't you notice there's houses right near Cold Harbor? Wouldn't you seek out the abutters, how they feel about it? If this is any indication how the planning board is going to work with new businesses, are you going to seek out community input? You didn't in my case.
Okay.
And
all right.
also,
Wait, excuse me.
I have just 10
no,
more
excuse me.
seconds I'm going to say.
No, excuse me. This article
If this
is.
had been put
Excuse me.
correctly in the warrant.
Excuse me. You don't have the floor anymore. This article is about a bylaw dealing with alcoholic beverage consumption under a permit on town property. I understand that you're upset and have issues about the Cold Harbor Brewery. I'm sure that the planning board has time when you can go to their meetings. The select board has time to go to their meetings. But I'd like you to finish your remarks focusing on why people should vote for or against a bylaw having to deal with drinking on town property. That's what's under discussion right now.
There's a total lack of transparency. The town has failed, I say, yet the one brewery, the one model that we have has been a total, if you're in a butter, if you have this in your backyard, if you can just imagine that, why give license to this group to try to create and expand outdoor drinking in Westborough?
Okay. Thank you. Again, this motion has to do with amending a bylaw about alcoholic beverage consumption on town property and in town buildings. We've heard from... Excuse me, you no longer have the floor. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, back here. I think you'll have to go to the microphone. I don't think we have the roving microphone person down here right now.
Cheryl Thomas, 62 Adams Street. I'm sorry, I don't know what the current law says. Is there any drinking allowed in public on town property or not? Because that doesn't, it's not clear here what the change is from to what it's going to be. I mean, it's clear what it's going to be, but not what it's from. And the second part of my question is, why is this such a broad article? So it feels like a can of worms where you might allow drinking anywhere, just at the subjective point of view of the Board of Selectmen. Why is it not focused specifically at outdoor dining if that was the intent?
Ms. Keogh, are those your questions? Are those your questions?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Ms. Williams.
The changes are in the warrant, so it's the words that are in bold and are italicized are the change, and then we also had a strike through and yeah, so it's the words in bold. So you're right. So it would only be at the authorization of the select board under a permit. Currently there's no alcohol allowed in town buildings. There is some authority for the town manager to allow alcohol in places like Bay State Common. And so this would really clarify how that's applied. We can also have alcohol at the country club as an example, even though it's a municipal building, it's not used for municipal purpose, and so we're allowed to have that. So this is really to clarify that and to make the process more easy to understand. It is true that part of this is to allow for the outdoor dining. That's something that the Economic Development Committee specifically has been looking at through the local rapid recovery program. They've done some work with downtown businesses in terms of things that they're looking to do, and one of them is that outdoor dining. And so if you have a restaurant downtown and you're looking to put seating outside, your options really are the sidewalk and the public parking spaces, and therefore we would need this change in order for the board to allow for that. In addition, it would also allow for alcohol consumption in municipal buildings. So buildings that might have alcohol consumption or might want that would be, as an example, I know the library has an interest in holding an event that they've held in the past where there would be some alcohol consumption. The Great Hall, as an example, unfortunately, we weren't able to really open that to the public because as soon as it became available, COVID-19 happened. But we expect that in the future there could be events at the Great Hall at the Forbes Municipal Building where someone might want to offer alcohol. So this is going to be very controlled. If this were to pass, the select board will certainly set up their own policy and procedure. But we believe that this is a good amenity for the community and definitely the businesses as well.
Thank you. Does that address your questions?
It does, but
Yes.
I mean, it does, but it just, I wouldn't support the article just because it's too loose. And what would the criteria be for the select board to make that approval or not? Like, one time they might approve it, one time they might not. I mean, it just feels very vague. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments about this article? Yeah, yes, Mr. Gill.
I would just make one more addition. I think in speaking with the Economic Development Committee, we were concerned that for restaurants downtown, if you have your own parking, then they were able to establish outdoor dining. And unfortunately for restaurants who didn't have that available to them, they couldn't do that. And they felt really harmed them in sort of trying to come back to business. And so we're, at a minimum, trying to work through that and see what we can do for those downtown restaurants.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Silverberg.
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. I'm speaking in support of the article for similar reasons that Mr. Keogh just mentioned, that many of you may know that we're going back to pre-COVID standards where these outdoor dining facilities and parking lots are no longer going to be allowed, and these restaurants are still going to be looking for some outdoor dining, and this might be an option for them. I like the idea of having events in the Great Hall or some of the other municipal buildings. I believe that if this passes, the selectmen will develop a policy that the town can refer to understand when these permits might be issued. And I think that's the job of the selectmen. It's our job to decide whether or not we want to allow this, and I think we should allow it. And this would not affect policy or bylaws or any drinking in private property. So existing private property would be governed by the bylaws as they currently stand, and that wouldn't have no impact on that, and or the ABCC governance of alcohol consumption in town. So I think we should pass it because I think we should try and encourage outdoor dining and other uses for this bylaw. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gold.
Thank you. Ben Gold, 19 Blake Street. I'm going to stand against this article. I think as much as we love and adore our select board, I agree that this is too loose, it's too vague. I think if the board is interested in establishing rules for people to maybe establish sidewalks, dining or however else they want to do that, that should all be defined and listed in this article. So I want to see where, okay, how long is the permit? What's the length? How long do we get to have it for? If for outdoor dining, is that different than a one-time use? That all could be put, I don't even want to imagine like a proposing an amendment. Let's just table this. We can come back in the spring with a more fully formed article describing how long, what you want to use it for, what are the rights of the Board of Selectmen to use this. So I'm going to be against this article as written. Thank you.
Ms. Marshall.
Thank you very much. Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. So to respond directly to that comment, I'll refer you to there are bylaws regarding signs in town. The select board just recently defined a policy regarding signs on the Rotary. So the bylaw doesn't speak to that, but this board took it under its as an initiative to define that to address safety and other complaints that have been received. So the bylaw is not intended to be prescriptive as to that level of detail. Certainly you're entitled to your opinion, and I understand that concern. But it would be the job of this board, just like we established an animal control bylaw and updated, we updated the bylaw to that effect, and then we established policies thereof. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion? Do you want to speak again? Sorry, you want Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to add that if a restaurant were to take advantage of what this bylaw allows, they would still need to go for an alteration of premises, which would require them to come to the board as a local licensing authority and then also go through the state. So it wouldn't just, if the selectmen just approved the permit, that's really just for the use of that space. And then there's an additional step to serve alcohol outside of your building.
Thank you. Mr. Gold, were you wanting to follow up?
Yes.
Mr.
So as a follow-up to what Mrs. Marshall said, so alcohol and alcohol licensing is not the same as signs. So if we go back to the article about our animal control, that was actually a very detailed bylaw. It had rules on like how big your chicken coop could be and how offset it was and what the fines were, and like that was a very big article. This feels to me along the same level when we are going from you can't have alcohol in all these places to you might be able to have alcohol in these places if we decide. I think that warrants more time, more consideration, more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Henderson.
Karen Henderson, 11 High Street. I'm just standing in support of this article. I think I can trust my Board of Selectmen to make those decisions. It sounds like it's about permitting for special events or special circumstances. I don't have a concern about that. I like what Ms. Williams just added in terms of the actual process that would have to go into place. So I'm in support of the article.
Thank you. Yes, gentleman in the back.
I have to agree, way too vague.
Name and address again, please.
Richard Krinsky, 16 Kings Grant Road.
Thank you.
A problem I have is you open this up, and the situation I have in my backyard now is there's no limit to how many people can gather there. The town hasn't attempted to put any limit on it. There could be 500 people there. There could be 700 people there. No limit. This is total vagueness. I've written Mr. Edinburgh. I wrote him when he first elected about the situation. He did respond to me. I wrote him a second time with complaints. He never responded to me. So I question what the previous speaker said. I don't trust the select board. It's about a lot more than just special permits. I don't know whether you're getting taken in by the vagueness of it, but it's about setting loose, encouraging outdoor drinking, and these businesses may need it, but I'm just saying, get the one outdoor drinking establishment that you have in this town. You've failed miserably as a select board to control it in any kind of reasonable way. So I don't know why we'd want to try to give you more power to, not manage other establishments well.
Okay. Thank you. Other discussion? Yes, Mr. Edinburgh.
So in the discussion about, Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. So in the discussion about the vagueness or specificity of this, one of the things as part of the process of this warrant article coming forward was an effort by the EDC to look at other communities with the component related to outdoor dining, right? And the guidance that the EDC heard back at meetings over the summer and in the spring were that regulating by policy versus bylaw, as far as getting into the details of what's allowed, when, and how, actually works better. It works better because you can put a policy in place, and if that policy isn't working well, you can fine-tune it with an immediate response. We don't need to wait 6 months, potentially, for town meeting to reconvene to modify a bylaw. The select board has the ability at any meeting to amend and adjust those policies, enforcement, things of that nature. A large impetus of this article was the use of town-owned property for allowing alcoholic beverages. We had a wedding at Lake Chauncey. That family would have loved to have some beer and wine or champagne toast. They weren't, no policy to allow them to provide alcohol at the wedding. Again, we see events potentially at the library, at the Forbes Great Hall. Implementation of this change would come to the select board for policy. I know many of you here watch our meetings regularly, so if you look at the amount of time and care and attention to 2 of the recent policies we've updated, which is the flag policy and the signs on the rotary, you can imagine the level of detail and time and attention we're going to put to this policy in putting things in place. And so I support this article. I voted with the select board to support it. I support it as an individual as well. I think it'll benefit our use of town facilities, and it will help EDC with making our downtown a more vibrant and active environment, which is something we as town officials hear the demand for all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from anyone who hasn't spoken? Okay. Your action comes on Mr. Keogh's motion, which is to move the article as printed in the warrant. And just to clarify, that means that as it says that deleting the strike-through text and adding the bold italicized text, so that's what the effect would be. Will all those in favor of the main motion by Mr. Keogh please raise their voting slips? Thank you. All those opposed? It is a majority vote, but not by as much as the others, but as a majority vote, the motion carries. Thank you. We now turn our attention to Article 18, amending zoning bylaws. Mr. Ball.
Jim Ball, 78 Lyman Street. I move the town approve Article 18 as written in the warrant.
Mr. Ball.
The planning board held a public hearing on September 28, 2021, and voted unanimously to support Article 18 as written in the warrant. The public hearing was advertised in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette on September 10, 2021, and September 17, 2021. If I may, John?
Yes, Mr. Ball, presentation?
We have a presentation. I don't think it's necessary. I'm going to give you a quick idea of what this is about. Over the years, we come across a number of properties where a zoning line may intersect or cross a property line for a very small amount, and we've been trying to clean these up. So it's essentially a housekeeping article. At 64 Otis Street, it's split into two zoning districts where approximately 2% of the parcel is zoned highway business and the remaining 98% is zoned general business, or I'm sorry, general industrial. So the current split just creates problems and differing and inconsistent regulations on one property.
Did you want to show the map, Mr. Ball?
Excuse me?
Would it be helpful to show the map?
Certainly could show the map.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So you can see it's just the corner in orange relative to the rest of the property, purple that represents the difference in the zones where the property line crosses. This change would simply create a uniformly zoned parcel with consistent requirements for the entirety of the parcel, and it would be zoned general industrial.
Okay, it sounds like they have a more detailed presentation if anyone wants it, but first we'll see if there's any questions. Any questions or comments on Mr. Ball's motion? Seeing none, this action requires a 2/3 vote. So anyway, all those in favor of Mr. Ball's motion, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none opposed. That is a unanimous vote, which is obviously more than 2/3. The motion carries. We now turn to Article 19. Mr. Silverberg.
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. I move that Article 19 be returned to the Planning Board for further study.
Mr. Silverberg.
The Planning Board held a public hearing on September 28, 2021, and voted unanimously to recommend that Article 19 be returned to the Planning Board for further study. The public hearing was advertised in the Telegram and Gazette on September 10th, 2021, and September 17th, 2021.
Mr. Silverberg.
So, most of you know we have general industrial zoning in the east side of town and the west side of town, Computer Drive, Research Drive, and then over by Otis Street. We also have an overlay that's currently on the east side of town by Computer Drive and Research Drive. When the owner of 64 Otis, the previous article, approached us with the zoning change that we just passed, they also requested that we consider extending the overlay that's currently on the east side of town to include their property on the west side of town. We agreed to put that on the warrant with the caveat that we would have to hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to the town whether to support it or not, or to study it further. During the public hearing and in other meetings, we raised a lot of questions about that extension, and we just think there's still too many open questions on that. I can get into some of those if you want to, but I think at this, again, ask me the questions and I'll be happy to get further into that. But for now, I think we should return it back to the planning board and study it a little further to see if it's something we really want to do and bring back to the town.
Thank you, Mr. Silverberg. Any questions? Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. Just want to report that in our meeting, our select board public meeting immediately prior to town meeting, the select board voted unanimously to support the motion to return this article to the planning board for further study.
Thank you. Any other discussion? For people who care about the details, this action is only, as Mr. Silverberg pointed out, is just to refer the item back to the committee, so it means that the proposed change in the warrant would not take effect. It essentially just refers it back to the committee for further study. All those in favor, if there's no discussion, all those in favor, please raise their cards. Thank you. Any opposed? I see none in opposition. That is a unanimous vote. We now turn our attention to Article 20, amending zoning bylaw, Article 3, off-premises signs. Ms. Nurse.
Hazel Nurse, 80 Nurse Street. I move that Article 20 be returned to the planning board for further study.
Ms. Nurse.
The planning board held a public hearing on September 28, 2021, with a continuance on October 5th, 2021. The board voted unanimously to recommend that Article 20 be returned to the planning board for further study. The public hearing was advertised in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette on September 10th, 2021 and September 17th, 2021. This article had to do with off-premises signage. We did not really receive it as a planning board to look at until September and felt very strongly this is something that needed to be studied further, and therefore request that this be returned to the planning board for further study.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse. Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I want to report that the select board voted unanimously to support the motion to return this article to the planning board for further study.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Any discussion? Another motion to refer back to the planning board. Seeing none, your action comes on Ms. Nurse's motion to refer. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none, is it a unanimous vote? The motion carries. Article 21, amend general bylaws. Article 38, animal control. Ms. Marshall.
Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Ms. Marshall.
So at the annual town meeting in 2021, an amendment to the animal control bylaw was passed specifically regarding poultry. When this amendment was submitted to the Attorney General, which is part of the process for a bylaw change for approval, the AG disapproved of the portion that stated fourth and further offenses would be fined $500. The reason for the disapproval is due to the conflict with Mass General laws. It states that the town's bylaw may be enforced by way of a fine not to exceed $300. So if you look in your booklet, the only change is sort of in the middle of the page on page 24 with the bold italicized. The bylaw already called for a $300 for a third offense. So this article will update the bylaw based on the AG's comments and state that the third and further offenses will be charged $300. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Any questions on Ms. Marshall's motion or the topic at hand? Seeing none, your action comes on Ms. Marshall's motion to move the article as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. Unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 22, an acceptance of a trail easement. Mr. Welsh.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Welch.
Mass Department of Transportation is working on a project that will replace the Fisher Street bridge that goes over the MBTA. The existing bridge has been closed since 1987 due to significant deterioration. It will be replaced with a prefabricated pedestrian and bicycle bridge. This will create a fully accessible shared use path from Smith's Parkway across the bridge to link the existing Fisher Street roadway to the south and connect to the Westborough Charm Bracelet Trail System. This article authorizes the Select Board to acquire an easement for the purpose of permitting the town to operate, repair, and maintain a shared use path for public recreational purposes as a walking and bicycle path. The construction phase is planned to occur in the winter of 2021-2022. Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Welch. Any questions? Seeing no questions, your action comes on Mr. Welch's motion to approve the article as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. That is a unanimous vote. Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move that we dissolve the October 18, 2021 special town meeting.
Mr. Edinburgh has moved to dissolve the October 18th, 2021 special town meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none, the meeting is dissolved. Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks for putting up with my mistakes tonight. Thanks.